All right. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected. What's going on, guys? We have the early chatters are in. Excuse me. And good to see y'all on this Monday morning, December 28th. And we are live on Rockfin, ROKFIN.com. Please come watch me on Rockfin and give us a chat or two on Rockfin. Would like to say hello to you on the Rockfin. I do have the bombardier doors are closed, so hopefully my stream won't be too weird. Anyways, guys, welcome. Good to see y'all here. Excuse me. Yeah. Let's get into it. So, yeah, as usual, I had quite a number of interesting things sent to me and or tweeted at me and or messaged to me. But I wanted to talk about this. Because we were kind of discussing, or not kind of, we were definitely discussing what we're going to do in the future as people and governments and the whole planet figures out that we're in a world of hurt in regards to climate change. And so this is tweeted out by Naomi, hashtag stand with Tulsi, hashtag I concur. She tweets out, Harvard students participating in a project funded by Bill Gates will start scattering particles in our upper atmosphere to quote unquote dim the sun. All right, we'll leave out the whole Bill Gates part of that equation for the moment. Because that actually just opens up a whole other can of worms or a box of ideas that I don't really want to go down or get into. But anyways, interesting nonetheless. So this is an article from Reuters from December 18th, 2020. Planned Harvard balloon test in Sweden stirs solar geoengineering unease. Do you feel uneasy? An early experiment. So I'm just going to read this article on face value, first of all, and then I'll kind of discuss it as I go, or I will stop and comment on this. But already signaling to the people that this is an early experiment. We really don't know what's going on here. You know what I'm saying? Scientists have just been sitting around like this. Oh, I wonder if this is going to work or not. Of course, we know that solar radiation management is an old idea. It's been around for a really long time. And that reminds me, that I forgot to look for something. The idea has been around for a really long time. People know what it is, and they know how it works. But they're signaling to everybody, this is an early experiment. We just don't know what's going to go on. Anyway, so here we go. An early experiment towards using sun-dimming technology to cool global warming has opponents fearing a slippery slope towards engineering the climate. And as they should. everyone should be concerned about this idea. Everybody who is concerned about, keeping what's left of our planet intact or livable, keeping what's left of our planet out of a dystopian future, but we'll go on. Harvard University scientists plan to fly a test balloon above Sweden next year to help advance research into dimming sunlight to cool the Earth, alarming environmentalists opposed to solar geoengineering. As opposed to the environmentalists who are not opposed to solar geoengineering. Does anybody carry that badge in their wallet? I'm not opposed. I'm totally for it. I'm an environmentalist. I'm totally for geoengineering. Open air research into spraying tiny sun-reflecting particles into the stratosphere to offset global warming has been stalled for years by controversies, including that it could discourage needed cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. All very pertinent and relevant. In a small step, the Swedish Space Corporation agreed this week to help Harvard researchers launch a balloon near the Arctic town of Kiruna next June. Next June, you say. It would carry a gondola with 600 kilograms of scientific equipment 20 kilometers high. There are very many real concerns about the risks of climate change and solar geoengineering, said David Keith. There's the name that pops up in conjunction with SRM often. David Keith, who was involved in the project and is a professor of applied physics at the Harvard School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. Understanding them requires a range of activities, including experiments, said Keith, who is also a professor of public policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. The unmanned flight had originally been planned for the United States, but was moved partly because of U.S. restrictions caused by coronavirus. And Sweden isn't all that worried, I guess. I don't know. The flight, which requires approval from a Harvard Project Advisory Committee, will test how to maneuver the balloon and check communications equipment and other systems. It would not release any particles into the stratosphere. Alrighty, that's good. Still, if successful, it could be a step towards an experiment. An experiment, dun dun dun, perhaps in the autumn of 2021 or spring of 2022, to release a tiny amount, up to 2 kilograms of non-toxic calcium carbonate dust into the atmosphere, Keith said. Studying that material's effects on high-altitude sunlight could help advance understanding, I believe is what they meant to say, of how solar geoengineering might work. A slippery slope? Question mark, but opponents see the Swedish balloon as a step on a slippery slope towards engineering the climate with an artificial sunshade, something with potentially large and hard to predict risks, such as shifts in global rain patterns. There is no merit in this test except to enable the next step. You can't test the trigger of a bomb and say this can't possibly do any harm, said Nicholas Hallstrom, director of the Swedish Green think tank What Next? Oh, but we test the triggers of bombs every single day, so. What's a little test regarding solar geoengineering and the scale of things, Nicholas? Because the bombs, they keep on a-flying and they keep on getting triggered. The bombs keep on a-bombing. So. Let's see. Hold on one second. Yeah, my apologies again to the Rockfinners. Again, for whatever reason, the stream is a little bit weird, but it's okay. It's gonna pick up. It's gonna get better. Anyways, Swedish society is increasingly calling for real, immediate solutions to climate change, he said, such as a rapid transformation away from fossil fuels and toward a zero-carbon society. He said the Harvard project represents the polar opposite, as it could create the impression that continuing use of fossil fuels is possible. Sure. But I think, there are lots of things that represent or create the impression that continuing use of fossil fuels is possible. Like a capitalist growth economy, or even renewables on some level. Green growth and renewables, and also the idea that we're going to get to net zero by 2050, on some levels, allows people to go, oh, whew, we don't have to do anything real serious right now. We can just continue using fossil fuels. Because we're making progress. Meanwhile, let's release some emissions. Lily Fuhrer, head of the International Environmental Policy Division at the Heinrich Böll Foundation in Germany, also said the plan was crossing an important political red line, quote unquote. They don't want to stop at this small experiment. The reason is to get bigger experiments, she said. She and Hallstrom said the plan would violate a global 2010 moratorium on geoengineering under the UN Convention on Biodiversity. That non-binding moratorium, however, allows exemptions for small-scale scientific research studies. Of course it does. Officials at the Harvard project, the Stratospheric Controlled Perturbation Experiment, yeah, we're going to control some perturbations, said they did not believe it needed any special approval from Sweden for the flight. They just didn't believe it, so they just went ahead and scheduled it. ScopeX said about 300 similar stratospheric balloons were launched worldwide in 2019. Backers of ScopeX include Microsoft founder Bill Gates. Dun, dun, dun. Bill Gates and his population control agenda. We're gonna put that whole conversation aside into a whole other basket and not even go down that road. Annie Bolinius, spokeswoman for the Swedish Space Corporation, also said, we comply with all applicable international and national legislations. Janos Pastor, executive director of the Carnegie Climate Governance Initiative, that sounds very official. And that sounds like, they're just, the Carnegie Climate Governance Initiative sounds like they're just only doing good things. Praised the openness of the Harvard step-by-step approach. Let's not exaggerate or overreact on the critical negative side, he urged, saying that the Swedish test could help society debate and understand the urgency of addressing climate change. Could it now? Okay. I mean, on some levels, I guess, it could be kind of like a or else bludgeon, right? Like, you guys better stop using fossil fuels or else we're going to just release some random crap in the atmosphere to try and control this. So, that's what we're going to be left with if we don't get this thing under control. I don't know. Is that scary enough? Is that frightening enough? I don't know. I mean, all of it is a bunch of madmen, basically. Some of them are very, supposedly very knowledgeable people with degrees and whatnot and professorships and whatnot. But there's a lot of madmen out there trying to posit or decide what will be good for humanity in the future, in the near future, as regards to climate change and what we should do in the face of it. And the question is whether these people should be the ones making the decisions. And I would say perhaps not. But proponents of solar geoengineering Geoengineering, also known as solar radiation modification, say deployment of the technology could be a shortcut to slow a rise in global temperatures that is stoking more heat waves, wildfires, droughts, and rising sea levels as billions of tons of greenhouse gases build up in the atmosphere. But opponents fear that it could undermine commitments to act under the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement and could have unwanted side effects. Well, it would also, for instance, do nothing to slow a buildup of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that is turning the world's oceans increasingly acidic. Keith said that it made sense, woo, just Freudian slip there. It made sense to study solar geoengineering. Okay, here we go. There is a long history of people doing research on things that were socially unpopular at the time that we now see as important, he said, such as birth control. That is all very true. All very true. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I don't know why. So, just I just want to say, okay, this is, of course, frightening that they're going to be tinkering with the skies or tinkering with the weather. I know it's very frightening. I don't know why you guys are not seeing anything. My apologies. Is there a reason for this? Can you guys still hear me? I don't know. Yeah, okay, you guys can see me. Basil Peterson says throw a bunch of crap at the wall and see what sticks. I mean, that's generally the human take on technology or technological advancements or any kind of advancements. They just, hey, how about this? My guess is that if we have some kind of major event or like a major, if we have some major catastrophic global warming events, we get some just insane heat waves, right? If it starts becoming something that's like out of control, if we see, 120, 130 degree heat waves in the middle of certain continents or places where they grow food, and that could certainly happen in the next 5 years. Absolutely. Especially if that happens in conjunction with a blue ocean event, right? With losing all the ice in the Arctic and we start to see temperatures go way up. This is going to be the fact that they're going to test this is going to be, used as a kind of a shoehorn to just go like, well, they're either going to say a couple of things. We tested it and it looks like it's going to work, or, we're pretty certain it's going to work, but here we go. We're just going to go do it. But my thoughts on this is that if you think that in 2020 that they haven't done any tests on this, the U.S. military and all the militaries of the world generally have known that climate change has been something that is a serious threat, something that is on the horizon. And they've known it for decades, since at least the 70s, if not earlier than that, right? The U.S. military has known major corporations, fossil fuel companies have known that climate change is a serious threat. They have known that climate change has been a serious threat. We're going to say generously since the 70s. That's 50 years ago, if my math is correct. And if you think that none of those militaries, including and especially the United States military, hasn't done any tests around solar radiation management, hasn't been involved in some serious testing around this, and all the possible ways that they could manage climate change. If you think that they haven't gone down that road, I find it very hard to believe. I find it extremely hard to believe that not only have they not gone down that road and tested things and checked things out and tried to figure out what they're going to do when climate change goes off the rails or over the falls or however you want to put it. The idea they haven't already put some things into play, I also think is highly unlikely. But, I'm not, I don't really want to go on a geoengineering tangent, but I'm just saying, I find these articles just, again, I think this is probably 20% informational and 80% propaganda, this article about solar radiation management. Here we go, guys. We're going to test it. We're going to send up a balloon and test it out. This idea has been around for a very long time. A very long time. The U.S. military in the 1940s, which is, if you want to do your math, that's a long time ago, was talking about controlling the weather. Was talking about, dominance through controlling the weather. I mean, David Keith himself, or is it Keith David? I get them all mixed up. David Keith said, has in his own paper around this is talking about, ideas around geoengineering from the 70s. Do you really think that? Sorry, I know my picture keeps going out. My apologies. Do you really think that they just haven't done any tests around geoengineering until now? That that they're just sitting around going like, well, it's an interesting idea, but we don't think that we can really, because of whatever treaties or things that we've agreed to, or we're not going to do any of these tests because it would be a bad thing to do, or be immoral, or it would be frowned upon. I find it extremely hard to believe, given the history of technology itself and how we use technological advancements are advanced prior to figuring out what the negatives are, right? They're all, they do all the studies and all the they get it all together, and they don't even really think about what the negatives are. And if there are negatives, and if people do voice concern, they're like, well, how are we going to get around this? Because we're going to have to get some lawyers, or establish like a corporation or a think tank, or some kind of entity to come up with talking points and legal strategies to get around the all right, guys, should be back. Sorry about that. I don't know. I seem to be haunted by tech difficulties more than anybody I watch on YouTube, but for whatever reason. But I'm sorry to my friends on Rockfin. The Rockfin stream totally got jacked, so Not going to get it back. Sorry about that. We'll try and just get this one back. But to continue, what I was saying is that I don't believe for 1 second that they haven't done tests on geoengineering, that the countries of the world have not already done major tests on geoengineering. So this whole article about we're going to send up a balloon in 2021 to find out what happens is just complete, utter nonsense. So my apologies for the break, guys. Yeah, so I just don't believe it for a second, and I find these articles really humorous. Yeah, just hilarious. I'm not a big like. Again, I'm not a big like they're geoengineering the whole planet. All weather events are controlled. Like I'm not one of those people. I just think that I'm not one of the people that believes that geoengineering is controlling all the weather of the planet, or that all the things are manipulated. I don't think that's possible, but I do think that there has been extensive testing on geoengineering already done. It's already been done. And is there some geoengineering going on already? Yes, there is. There has to be some kind of geoengineering going on already. Some that I have witnessed myself. So, and I'm just saying that as a matter of common sense. I think it's just common sense and the things that I've witnessed just seem so obvious that something is going on. I'm not quite sure what it is. But the idea that we haven't rolled out anything involving geoengineering already is just a little silly. And we've already had Dylan Howard Project Mirror, yes. Reflection, Dr. Ye, yes. We've discussed the Mirror Project, yes, for sure. It's a good idea. It's not a bad idea. I like Walter Jane's idea better. Create regenerative agriculture in order to produce more clouds, and those clouds then become the mirrors. And so we're not like filling the oceans or large landscapes with more tech. And it wouldn't take much time to actually start doing that stuff. But I guess the Mirror Project is the least one of the less destructive or invasive ideas. Yeah, China is definitely doing geoengineering. Yeah, well, and we've had admissions from other countries and corporations themselves, doing some forms of weather manipulation or geoengineering, whatever you want to call it. Billy Joe Schmo says every country in the world says they are doing geoengineering except the United States. Yes, exactly. So this little like dance, this little charade that they're doing is kind of ridiculous. It's a way for them to officially say, well, we're testing it out. It's a misdirect, and it's a way, again, for them to say that they haven't done anything, and so it's like plausible deniability for people who are saying, can you tell us what's going on with geoengineering as it stands right now? It gives them this kind of front-facing idea that they aren't doing anything yet, or they've been sitting on it because they're so worried about the effects on the planet. Anyways, yes, Dylan Howard, regenerative agriculture. The reason why also I say that is because I want to bring you this crazy story and it's a true story. This crazy story of Claire Patterson. Do you guys know who Claire Patterson is or was? Well, you probably don't, because hold on. Yes, realize, yes, cloud seeding for rain is much different than trying to block the sun at lower. You're right. You're right. But I'm just saying, if they're doing, I think that the idea that they're not manipulating something, doing something like that or something, personally, my thoughts are that they're creating clouds. They're creating clouds. It's easy to create a cloud. It's very easy. They do it all the time where I live. They create clouds. There's planes, they fly across, they give some contrails, the contrails spread out, creates a cloud. They create clouds. And clouds do what? It's basically the mirror project. They reflect radiation back to the sky. They cool, cools the temperature of the earth and reflects the radiation back out. They're already doing that. I absolutely know for a fact they're already doing that because I can see it happening. And you can even say it's just totally accidental, but it doesn't look very accidental to me. It looks pretty controlled. But if you just watch the skies, you can see them doing it. It's just not very hard to see them doing it. Right, Billy Joe Schmo frankincense over a military base in Cape Canaveral. They made the clouds wavy and straight and wavy again. Yeah. Right, lightning rod. It's easy to click. You can create clouds very, very easily. And so the idea that they're not already doing that, basically employing, fake clouds, man-made clouds to redirect the energy, it's just not that hard to do. And the idea that they would, be upfront and tell everybody about it, or they wouldn't do it because of it might have negative effects on the planet. I mean, look at every other technological advancement we've ever made on the planet. There's blatant disregard for the effects of the advancement. So, Judy Truitt, we have military bases here in New Mexico. The clouds are made by military planes, right? Two Beaver says, but the problem is that it does not allow the heat to escape at night. That is why nighttime temps are rising faster than the day. Possibly. Sure. Possibly. Very possible. Okay. I want to just quickly touch on this really crazy story that I read about Claire Patterson, who the title of the story is, hold on, let me make sure that y'all can see this. Can you see this? Oh no, not that one. Not that one. Here you go. You can see this one. The most important scientist you'd never heard of. Anyways, Claire Patterson was a chemist and a bit of a geologist, who he's basically the person that figured out how old the Earth is, 4.5 billion years. And he also is the person who discovered that we were poisoning ourselves with lead and gasoline and also other things. But mainly the lead we used to burn, they used to have ethyl gasoline, which was gasoline with lead in it. And basically we were poisoning ourselves to an insane degree. And he basically led the fight to get lead out of gasoline. And here's the interesting, well, hold on. Here's the interesting part of the story, or the horrible, disgusting part of the story, was this guy, Robert Kehoe, basically controlled every study, all the information around lead and gasoline. He was hired by the corporations, by the Ethel Corporation and by the American Petroleum Institute, et cetera, et cetera. They hired him to basically do PR for the fossil fuel companies who were putting lead in the gasoline. He controlled the information around lead and gasoline for 40 years, from the 1920s to the 1960s. Claire Patterson was a chemist who discovered that we were poisoning ourselves with lead. He was doing this from basically the 50s on. In the 60s, he was doing studies on how much we were being poisoned by lead. He was taking samples from the ocean, the deep ocean, and sample ice cores from Antarctica and ice cores from the Arctic and ice cores from mountains and glaciers, and he was comparing them to samples. Basically, he was sampling from older periods of time, and sampling the present periods of time. Here we go. Let me go down here. Anyways, Claire Patterson also found that there were huge amounts of lead in the upper layers of the ocean. The upper layers of the ocean seemed to be polluted with industrial lead, found Claire Patterson. This is from 1969. Let me go down here. Sorry for the scrolling, guys. But this is just such a crazy story. And this really sums up what we've been doing with industrial civilization as far as poisoning the planet. Basically, they knew that lead was poisonous. There were people dying from, exposure to lead in factories. There were, gas station attendants and people that worked on cars and people that worked on making the lead. There were people just falling out, just becoming poisoned and stricken with dying and not being able to move or being paralyzed or et cetera, et cetera. And they knew it was poisonous and they still put it in gasoline anyways. They just created this PR campaign and created all these like safety measures to control people being exposed to lead while they were making it. It's a terrible story. It's a horrible story. So in the 60s, it started to be, Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, and there started to be more of an environmental movement going on in the 60s. People were becoming aware of what we were doing as far as poisoning the environment through our industrialization. Anyways, Claire Patterson, who worked at Caltech, by the way, Caltech is in Pasadena, which is my hometown. He started doing studies revealing that we were being poisoned by lead, and a lot of his studies, interestingly enough, were being funded by fossil fuel companies and other organizations. And when he started writing these studies, he was having his funding cut. They were smearing him in the papers. Does this sound familiar? He was, losing his funding. He was being smeared. They were saying he was a lunatic. He was a crazy person. Meanwhile, this guy, Robert Kehoe, who was in charge of the PR campaign to tell everybody that everything was fine, he was made head of every organization you could think of. He was on the board of every petroleum company you could think of. He had high government positions. He was awarded with everything possible, and he was basically a disgusting killer of human beings through his work. Let me go down here and find some numbers, which are quite scary. So Claire Patterson did some excavating and did some samples on. He sampled a 4,500-year-old Peruvian tooth, a 2,200-year-old Egyptian bone, and a modern American skeleton. And basically what he found was the modern American contained nearly 600 times more lead than his or her ancestors. So they tried to phase out lead from gasoline. They started this in the 60s. They tried it in the 70s, and there was a big push. Just like cigarettes, there was a consortium of people, money interests, powerful corporations who were like, no, you can't possibly mess with our profits, right? You can't possibly do that. We need this lead in the gasoline because we need the profits. They fought this. The EPA, took up the call by the Ethel Corporation and other corporations, and they stalled this phase down of lead and gasoline, it took until 1995 when the last leaded gas pump was taken out in the United States. Can you believe it took 30 years to get all of the lead out of gasoline in the United States, which is, meanwhile, children were being poisoned. In an unrelated story, I heard that there was a direct correlation to the phase out of lead and gasoline and violent crimes, right? So there was there were a lot of, there just was a higher level of violence, and we, they haven't concluded for sure that this was the factor in the many violent crimes that were taking place. But like over the last 30 or 40 years, violent crimes have gone way, way down, and they think it had something to do with taking lead out of gasoline, the poisoning that people were receiving from just the lead in the air. Anyways, I suggest you go read the story because I can't even read the whole thing. It's very long, but it's pretty horrific. What was being done in the name of technological progress or technological profits, if you will. Rich Diana, very good. Maybe leaded gasoline explains the boomers, right? But again, to correlate this to geoengineering, like maybe there isn't any correlation. I mean, there is a correlation in the fact that we geoengineered the planet. There were traces of lead as far away as Antarctica, right, in the upper layers of snow that Claire Patterson had found. We contaminated the entire planet with lead just by burning leaded gasoline in combustion engines all over the planet. So that's some serious geoengineering going on right there. But again, they knew it was bad. They knew it killed people. And they went on doing it for 70 years. For 70 years. They knew it was bad. They knew it was deadly, and they went on doing it for 70 years. Again, so the idea that they're not, that the countries of the world and the militaries of the world haven't employed or haven't thought about or haven't experimented with or haven't investigated geoengineering on a major level because, that would be bad. That whole idea is just naivete in the extreme. Anyways. So infuriating. Lastly, guys, I want to cover this story. Hopefully this shows up. Chinese citizen journalist jailed for 4 years for Wuhan reports. This is just breaking today. Citizen journalist in China who was talking about the early stages of the coronavirus in China has been jailed for 4 years. Zhang Zan was critical of the government's belated response to the outbreak. A court in China on Monday jailed a citizen journalist for 4 years for her non-sanctioned reporting from Wuhan as the COVID-19 outbreak unfolded earlier this year, accusing her of, quote-unquote, provoking trouble. Zhang Zan, 37, is a former lawyer who, like several other Chinese citizen journalists, traveled to Wuhan in late January and early February, motivated to tell the city, which had been locked down on January 23rd. At the time, information coming out of Wuhan was sparse, with authorities only on January 20th confirming the new virus circulating in the city since early December could spread between people. Ms. Zhang's live video reports showed a city in full lockdown and the situation in hospitals, and she was often critical of the government's belated response during the early stages of the outbreak. Her case was heard on Monday by a Shanghai court after 7 months spent in detention. So she's already been in jail for 7 months in a country where the courts are controlled by the ruling Communist Party. The sentence accused her of picking quarrels and provoking trouble and said she had spread fake information to foreign media outlets such as the U.S. government-funded Radio Free Asia. Ms. Zhang, who had traveled from Shanghai to Wuhan in early February, wasn't the only citizen journalist who ventured to the site of the coronavirus outbreak. The accounts of other citizen journalists, such as Chen Qixi and Li Zehua, provided a stark contrast to the state media reports describing a situation that had been completely under control. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens in a totalitarian, highly controlled state. So, I mean, you know, it's so great that we live in a free country. That we live, you know, in a Western democracy that is full of freedoms. So awesome that we don't have that kind of suppression of information. Oh, wait, hold on. We do. Hold on a second. UN rapporteur on Assange. We have Julian Assange. We have the case of Julian Assange, which I think is going to be decided on January 6th, if my date is correct. They're going to hand down a decision in the British High Court regarding Julian Assange being extradited, to the U.S. for releasing sensitive information, what has been called classified information, but basically casting a light on the U.S. military's criminal behavior in Iraq. The U.S. is trying to criminalize investigative journalism. A London court will decide on January 4th. Excuse me, it's sitting right there. I could have just read this byline. January 4th on the U.S. extradition request for Julian Assange. For Nils Melzer, UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, it's a political process and a travesty of justice. So Julian Assange has been basically detained. He's been in lockdown. He was in lockdown in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years. And then he was taken into custody by British police, and now he's awaiting trial for extradition. And a lot of people see this as an assault on press freedoms or the freedom of speech. Assange is what would be known as a whistleblower, and as other whistleblowers have been treated by our country, we have the case of Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, many others, John Kiriakou. Just as, present day examples of the criminalization of reporting. So, thank God we don't live in a totalitarian state. Thank God we have the freedom of speech or the freedom of press. But a lot of people are waiting with bated breath to hear what the decision on Assange is going to be. And a lot of people don't have high hopes, but we'll see. What's up, Muzza? How you doing? Thanks for being here. Everybody say hi to Muzza in the chats. Realize says no $2,000 checks. What a surprise. Yeah, that just kind of went away, didn't it? Trump signed the COVID bill, and it all went away. Yes, Trump just pardoned some war criminals, but has not pardoned Assange yet. Yes, exactly. That's what happens, right? War criminals get pardoned and whistleblowers get jailed. People who lie to the public in order to make millions, if not billions of dollars, are rewarded with boards, advisorships, official titles, political appointments, and people who tell the public the truth, have their funding cut, are fired, are put in jail, are smeared by the press. That's how that goes. Kiwi Bear, on the fence with Muzza, says thank me by clicking that thumb up chat. Click the thumbs up. That's what Muzza's got to say. Guys, I've run out of time today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I will be back tomorrow at the regular time of 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until next time, peace.